Hello and welcome to part 2 of my Scooby-Verse AU. Part 1 was reimagining the Scooby Gang, part 3 will be redesigning the Hex Girls, and this one's gonna be a twist on the Ghoul School. For this AU, I've decided to combine Ghoul School and the Reluctant Werewolf. It makes sense to me given that they were both released alongside each other in 1988. I used to watch those two movies at my aunt's house, so they're nostalgic for me. Let's get right into the premise. In this AU, Shaggy gets bit by a werewolf on one of the gang's monster hunts. After discovering he's a werewolf the hard way, he's contacted by Sibella, daughter of Dracula. As Dean of the Ghoul School, Sibella offers him a place there. If he enrolls, he'll have a safe place to gain control of his lycanthropy, learn about monster culture, and, if desired, even get a cure by the end of the semester. So, Shaggy enrolls, meets the latest cohort of monsters, and hijinks ensue.
Hey, Scoop, dig the puss on that chick.
Dig the what now? Shaggy, you dog. Let's start with Shaggy, the Reluctant Werewolf. We're gonna diverge from the original Reluctant Werewolf's premise quite a bit because, frankly, I'm just not interested in car racing. I do need to talk about this insane movie for a bit, though. I find it fascinating that there's a special book in this universe that states which human is next in line to become a werewolf, and that it picked Shaggy Rogers, of all people. Like, there's a picture of him and everything. And then Count Dracula sends his goons anyway to ensure Shaggy gets transformed. So it's like, if the goons never showed up, would Shaggy still have unwittingly exposed himself to moonlight? Or would he have just been chillin' as a human? Did he become a werewolf because fate itself willed it to be? Or because two guys came and flipped the top on his car? Does fate truly rule us, or do we create our own fates through our actions and habits? We're just gonna go the simple route and say he got bit by a werewolf while monster hunting. Okay, back to the AU. Shaggy initially enrolls at Ghoul School's college chapter to cure his lycanthropy. The cure requires consistent treatments over a period of several weeks. Long enough, in fact, for one semester of college. After finals, he'll have built up enough tolerance to get the final enchantment. But until that final treatment, he's stuck as a werewolf. So he might as well get used to it. And who knows, maybe he'll come to enjoy this new side of himself. At least, that's Dean Sibella's hope. Naturally, Scooby-Doo comes with Shaggy. This is for two reasons. One, he's still Shaggy's therapy dog, even if Shaggy's technically also a dog. And two, Scooby is also a monster. Spoilers for the first Scooby-Verse video I did, but yeah. He's an interdimensional spirit possessing the body of a dog, so enrollment actually extends to him as well. I don't know if he'd actually want to take classes, though. Speaking of which, Scooby would have a field day with Werewolf Shaggy. You're a rogue like me! He'd have to do a ton more work to calm Shaggy down, but maybe they'd also relate to each other more. Now they both get to play fetch and chase after sticks. They both howl under the same moon. They race each other through the forest, evenly matched. They were already two peas in a pod, now they're closer than ever. You could say they're two pups of the same litter now. I think Shaggy has a pretty rough time to start with. He's always been a bottomless pit of hunger, that much never changes, but everything else is new to him. He's never been to college before, never moved out of his parents' house, never had to deal with his bones shifting under his skin, or hair blanketing his body, or the massive onslaught of sensory input, or the insane mood swings, or... you get the idea. I'm still trying to figure out how dangerous Werewolf Shaggy would be. The Scooby-Verse typically keeps things pretty child-friendly, but it has been known to drop down into deep chasms of horror sometimes. Looking at you, Mystery Incorporated. I would want to explore a lot of the lighter aspects to being a werewolf, so that there's plenty of room for hijinks. Like Shaggy feeling compelled to howl when the school bell rings, or digging into his food face first, or getting caught wagging his tail, stuff like that. But there's also a ton of potential for body horror here. Shaggy waking up in the forest with a jagged hole in his memory. Shaggy struggling to reconcile his vegan identity with his deep, intense cravings for meat. Shaggy pulling away from his friends because he's terrified some shadowy part of him is taking control. Shaggy slowly realizing that, deep down, he's always been a cornered wild animal. And always will be. Shaggy has always felt out of control. There's so much in the world to worry about, and so little to trust. But now, how is he supposed to trust this new world when he can't even trust himself? When he doesn't even know what he is anymore? when there's this thing in his chest that growls and screams and claws at his ribcage? How long until he can't cage it anymore? Until he fully loses himself? Will he implode like a nuclear reactor? Or will this beast burst him open like a water balloon, leaving his skin a husk on the floor? And this is where the Ghoul School girls come in. We'll learn more about them soon, but they're quite the friendly bunch. In their own ways, they show Shaggy that being a monster doesn't mean you're a bad person, it just means you're different. The ghouls also introduce Shaggy to monster culture. It's a different set of rules, a different outlook on life. Humans are so concerned with being better, more civilized than animals, but monster society is more relaxed. Some of their people are possessed dogs or have pumpkins for heads. Why bother forming a hierarchy when everyone's unique? Some monsters scare each other for fun. Some of them chase their tails or howl at the moon. Some of them leave trails of goo everywhere they walk. So, despite the culture shock, I'd imagine this might actually ease some of Shaggy's social anxiety. This less judgmental society might free him to do things he always wanted to try, but never thought he could. Maybe it takes a society of monsters to get him to finally be himself. Wild, wacky, weird, and wonderful. When the end of the semester approaches, I wonder if he'd start to question getting the cure. He's gained so much love for himself, his new body, and this new culture. He's faced that scrabbling creature in his chest, looked it in the eye, and said, "Maybe you're not a monster. Maybe you're just scared." Does he really want to give all that up? To forget who he's become? And here's the plot twist. I don't know the answer. Obviously, he wouldn't just abandon the Scooby Gang, but I don't think he'd abandon the Ghoul School either. Maybe he gets the cure, or maybe he learns to walk in both worlds. Either way, he can rest assured knowing his good old buddy old pal Scooby-Doo will be walking with him every step of the way. Okay, moving on to his design for a bit. Shaggy has a red shirt for both the original Ghoul School and the Reluctant Werewolf, and I think a couple other movies, so we're gonna keep that here. It'll be a good contrast color from his typical green. It's still tie-dyed, but I did tuck it in all the way this time. He's a bit more relaxed by the end of the semester, so that frees him up to put more effort into his appearance. I ended up shifting his entire color palette, honestly. His fur is Scooby colored, so I made his pants a darker brown. I also tried blue pants, but I didn't like it as much. I made the hair on top of his head a little lighter for better contrast and color harmony. Maybe he got it bleached or something, I don't know. With his shirt now being red, it didn't make sense to have green anywhere. I don't think this ended up in the recording, but I tried having green eyes and a couple green pants patches, but I ended up preferring yellow for both. Not sure how I feel about such a drastic color palette change, but I think it works well enough to signify his life turning inside out. Maybe after the semester he'd go back to green. Or maybe he'd switch to a yellow shirt, symbolizing synthesis between his human and werewolf sides. Who knows? Shaggy still has his 70s vibe and accents of ska checker patterns, but his pants have evolved. I had this idea to have kind of like a split motif with the patches. On the left, he's got rectangular representations of his old life and human identity. On the right, more dynamic shapes representing his werewolf side. It took me a while to figure out how exactly that would work, but here's what I landed on. The right leg's pretty simple, just a moon and a bunch of stars. The left has a sun, opposing the moon, a closed eye, representing his desire to forget the monster world and go back to his old life, and a hand doing the peace sign. When I was trying to think of symbols of humanity, I thought of hands. I started with a reference of those prehistoric cave paintings, but the peace sign feels like it fits Shaggy more. Lastly, on his knee is more ska checker print. It started out as a simple reference to Shaggy's favorite music, but, as usual, I found more parallels after. In real life, the black and white checker print is a symbol of racial equality and solidarity. It still means that to Shaggy, but I think it also gave him an opportunity to reflect on his own opposites. If he chooses, he can embrace both of his sides, supernatural and mundane, controlled and free, monster and human. Here's Shaggy! I love my boy. Moving on to Jade. I've had this OC since I was like 8 years old. There wasn't much to her then, just a cool jack-o'-lantern biker lady with vines for arms. I wrote a Halloween story in 3rd grade featuring her and her ghost friend. I don't remember the plot anymore. My 3rd grade teacher took us down to the 60-year-old basement of our school, and we all read the stories we wrote to our class. That was fun. Now I'm breathing new life into Jade. Jade is very friendly and outgoing. Motorbiking is her passion. Her leather vest has a lot of spikes, chains, embroidery, and buttons on it. I like to think she has a matching sleeved jacket to protect her vine limbs while she's out biking. When deciding an embroidery motif for her jacket and pants, I decided to start with a rose motif. Upon doing some research, I found that roses actually have a fair bit of death association in Greek and Egyptian folklore, specifically when it comes to burial and mourning. Hector of Troy was anointed with rose oil, and roses in Egyptian tombs symbolize Isis and the love of mourners. Aphrodite also wept for Adonis when he died, and rose petals sprouted from his mouth and her tears. I mention this because this death motif also matches some of the meanings of the jack-o'-lantern. But I also wanted to explore some other floral designs. I just feel like it's kind of cliche to put roses on a biker jacket, you know? So I tried spider lilies, also associated with death in Japan, and I also did some pumpkin vines and blossoms, because obviously. And that's eventually what I landed on. That jacket fought me the whole way though. I think I got overwhelmed by all the possible options. Some other fun little details. The collar of her vest invokes the shape of flames. She's got pants chains with little charms on them, a double-layered necklace, and fancy black combat boots with yellow laces. I also put some yellow striping and embroidery down the sides of the pants. Now let's talk about the more pumpkin-y aspects of her character design. Starting with her head. It's green. I did this because of my deep and abiding hatred for orange, as evidenced by the last Scooby video, and also because I wanted to be unique. There's so many other types of pumpkins, and I never really see them used in jack-o'-lanterns. While I'm thinking about it, I tried a few different heads for Jade, and I ended up going with a really wide head. Jade can morph the cutouts on her face to fit her expressions and mood, kinda like Flowey from Undertale, I guess. The flame inside the cutouts can change as well. If she's angry or really excited, red flames shoot out in fiery swirls. If she's sad, the flames are dim and blue. Joy brings gold sparks. That kind of thing. As for the mythology around pumpkin people, there's a few routes I could have taken and what that means for Jade. I briefly toyed with the idea of making Jade a Dullahan, since they're sometimes given a jack-o'-lantern for a replacement head. But Dullahans in actual Irish folklore are quite ghastly. They're either malevolent spirits or unseelie fae with a taste for death and vengeance. Their carriages are made of human bones, their whips of human spines. Their rotting, desiccated head lies nestled in their arm, scanning the horizon for people who are about to die. That's not Jade, so I scrapped the Dullahan idea. Under the right conditions, the gases rising above peat bogs produce little balls of light. Some people in Britain and Ireland then started calling the lights jack-o'-lanterns. Jack-o'-lanterns also have their origins in the story Stingy Jack. He tricked the devil so many times he was banned from hell. Heaven didn't want him either, so he was forced to walk the earth with only a hollowed turnip to light his way. And finally, jack-o'-lanterns have been used in Ireland as a representation of the dead. The lights either represent the spirits themselves, or helped ghosts find their way around. And ultimately, the guiding light motif works really well for Jade. That's exactly who she is to the other students of Ghoul School. Not just literally with her glowing eyes, but her motto, "No one sits alone." People look to her for support and advice, and she can give it, so why wouldn't she? I love this girl. I am so glad I got to design her. Nora is an old soul. Literally. She died alongside her family in the Dust Bowl. She's seen wealthy people opportunistically snap up real estate during hard times. She's seen technology advance, entire landscapes change, and the world move on without her. And the whole way through, she fought. Fought to be seen and heard. Fought to protect what's left of her family's farm. Fought against greedy land buyers, bankers, and CEOs. Fought to protect nature. Fought for things to stay the same. Fought to stay relevant. She had become violent, vengeful, passionate. And now, she's tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being left behind. Of being an observer in everyone else's story. Of being alone. After 90 years, she finally sees the truth. She has no place in human society. So maybe it's time to try monster society. Nora's vengeful flame is burned out, and what's left in the ashes is a meek, shy girl. A girl who looks like she needs a friend. Jade immediately takes her under her wing, and they're fast friends from day one of the semester. Let's talk scarecrows for a minute. In doing research for this project, I discovered that scarecrows are actually ancient folk history. Rags and sticks constructed to scare off pests go as far back as ancient Egypt. Scarecrows also pop up in ancient Greece and Japan. And in Scotland and Ireland, scarecrows go by a variety of names. My favorites are Jack of Straw, Tatty Bogey, Worry Cow, and Hobbity Booby. Scarecrows didn't always just deter pests, they were a supernatural protector of the field. Their construction walks the line between function and culture, physical and spiritual, animate and inanimate, living and dead. Their designs shift to fit local culture and mythology. Each breeze whispers life into their tattered vessels, reminding humans that they're not alone. In the present day, scarecrows have become obsolete. Corvids are very clever and become desensitized to scarecrows in a matter of weeks, even hours. The only way to combat this is to make them move, and even that can yield weak results. Thanks to technology, we can invent better ways to scare off pests. A budget method is to string up a bunch of CDs onto a stick. They twist in the wind, throwing sparks of light that spook birds. Advanced motion-sensing lasers can also be used to the same effect. Scientists in 1989 even took a scarecrow and attached it to an air cannon. At random intervals, the scarecrow would pop up and successfully scare birds up to 6 acres away. And this is the tension present in the scarecrow. As time endlessly marches on and humanity advances, culture drifts away from its roots. Tradition gives way to innovation. We gain convenience and lose a piece of ourselves in the process. The scarecrow is a symbol of a bygone era where technology was simple, the supernatural was tangible, and man was steeped in nature and history. In short, the scarecrow symbolizes a losing fight against modernity. What once had a proverbial seat at the table is now left to compost with the food scraps, which is perfect for Nora's backstory. Now, I had a heck of a time trying to figure out how the scarecrow thing would work as a character design. I had a lot of interesting options. I could take inspiration from puppets and marionettes, actual scarecrows, art mannequins, and more. Like Scooby, I needed to have something to tie the ghost to its vessel. I briefly tried an ox yoke, that looked stupid. A lasso was slightly better, but still didn't quite work. Having a lasso around the neck had implications, and putting it around the chest made it look like a toddler on a leash, which was endlessly entertaining for me. Eventually, I landed on a marionette cross and strings. I like to think Nora grew up seeing puppet shows when her family went into town. As for the vessel itself, I ended up fashioning the doll after an artist's mannequin. A giant puppet or marionette felt too specific, an actual T-posing scarecrow was too rigid and impractical, and a store mannequin felt way too consumerist. I think the wooden mannequin fits because it's a blank slate, a second chance. Plus, it's fully articulated. Figuring out the clothing for the vessel was infinitely harder. Early on, I thought of putting her in very farmerish overalls. As a character designer, we're always told our first design is the most boring one. So I tried all these different styles thinking I'd come up with something better. Spoiler alert, I kinda didn't. I really wanted to incorporate some flowy fabrics and shiny stuff as a fashionable way to scare off birds. I also tried out some more feminine, dressy clothes. None of this really made it into the final design. Nora doesn't live on a farm anymore, I thought. Maybe she'd want to play with opposite styles. But as I discovered, she's still a farm girl at heart. She's most comfortable in utilitarian, structured, natural clothing. Her style leans a bit more masculine. So when I tried to give her lots of flashy jewelry, or put her in overly feminine, flowy outfits, it honestly felt like a betrayal of her character. So the overalls are here to stay. While designing Nora, I thought of my grandma a lot. She grew up in rural 1940s America, so she was raised to use what she had and take nothing for granted. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. As a result, I gifted a lot of details from my grandma to Nora's design. Nora's ghost has mine and my grandma's nose. Nora has the same silver bracelet that my grandma always wore. My grandma was directly related to the Fullers that rode the Mayflower, so I gave Nora the last name of Fuller. Grandma was great at using what she had, so Nora has a bunch of patches that would have been found in 1930s flour sacks. For anyone that doesn't know, during the Great Depression, companies started noticing that women were making dresses out of flour sacks, which were burlap, so they changed the fabric and they put floral and gingham patterns on the flour sacks. A couple other details about Nora. I did end up including a couple shiny things in her design. We've got the metal buckles and silver bracelet, but the pattern on her overalls pocket is a mosaic of cut-up CDs. Nora also wears Oxford shoes, paints on her facial features, and has a cute little droopy sun hat. In the final character sheet, I also included Nora's first vessel. In the 30s, the form she chose was overtly terrifying and Scarecrow-esque, much like Fiddlesticks from League of Legends. Just a freaky mess of burlap, sticks, barbed wire, farm tools, and... Is that a mouthful of human teeth? You don't know for sure. You don't not know for sure. Nora's vessel kept deteriorating, so she became a ship of Theseus over time. Not much is left of her old vessel, just a scrap of burlap she keeps in her pocket. Of the ghouls, I bet Scooby connects to Nora the most. After all, they both need to possess a vessel to interact with the physical world. But Nora's also a foil for Scooby. Whereas Scooby has to hold back his more destructive, vengeful tendencies, Nora never did. She burned like a red giant sun until her core ran out of fuel. Scooby is a tiny star with a searing, raging core he's desperately holding back. Scooby is outgoing and friendly. Nora is shy and closed off. Scooby was unwillingly bound to his vessel. Nora chooses hers. I think they can both learn a thing or two from each other. And I think they'd have fun chasing birds through the fields. The other interesting thing about the relationship is that Nora can see Scooby's real form, his spirit. That was kind of an uncomfortable adjustment for Scooby. He's not used to people looking him in the eyes. He prefers it when people look at the dog, because then they're not making direct eye contact with him, per se. Eye contact is a threat to most animals, including interdimensional spirits. It was also awkward talking to Shaggy after meeting Nora. Shaggy didn't know about Scooby's situation until Nora casually brought it up. I mean, Shaggy always knew something was special about Scooby, but an interdimensional being using a dog as a meat puppet was not the theory for why Scooby could talk. Even spirits have irrational fears. Scooby's was that Shaggy would abandon him once he learned what he really was. Obviously, that fear dissipates after the big reveal. Shaggy's not going to abandon his best friend, and if he did, he'd be a hypocrite given that he's also now a freak of nature. Here's Nora. I wasn't expecting to love her so much, but she is my baby now. She's 90 years old, but she baby. On to Ruby, the Moth woman. I know, another gem name. It was the placeholder name, and then it stuck. Like Jade, Ruby is a very confident girl. She's not an open book, though. She's quite standoffish and serious until you get to know her. Ruby is the friend you go to when you need tough love and blunt words. She'll solve your problems real quick, though. Ruby is a tailor and a fashion designer. Tailors are a staple in Monster Society, given that everyone has different features and needs. Ruby's goal is to design fashion that fits every monster body, so she plans for every contingency. Disabled? Got wings or a tail or a third arm? Plus-sized? Straight-sized? Mouse-sized? Giant-sized? She's got you covered. Ruby comes from a race of shape-shifting, fortune-telling moth people, so adaptive clothing has always been a priority for her. After Ruby makes the outfits, she gives them to her partner, Kostra. Kostra is a skeleton witch with tattoos on her bones. If I wanted to go insane, I would have drawn her. Too many bones. Once Kostra enchants the clothes, they can change size at will. They're also tear resistant, very useful for the shapeshifters. Ruby uses adaptive clothing for her own body as well. Ruby's got a human passing and a monster form, so the backs of her clothes have long magnetic seams for her wings. Ruby also has a colostomy bag, which she also has easy access to, given there's another magnetic clothing flap by her hip. She also, obviously, makes ostomy bag covers to match her outfits. While we're on the subject, let's talk more about her design. I'm gonna tell you right now, a lot of her design is directly inspired by a lady I met at the airport. This lady had peak fashion sense. We're talking high fashion western with a fedora, long black feather coat, killer wide leg pantsuit, and fancy square-toed boots with heels. And although I tried a lot of different ponchos and shawls to mimic moth wings, I ended up going with the feather coat. And the same boots and hat. The pantsuit stayed roughly the same throughout the design, same with her bright red circular glasses. The main innovation was adding the slits at the bottom of the legs, but I kinda knew what I wanted from the get-go. As for her monster form, I played with a few different versions. The Mothman we typically see in media looks more like a big black bird with bug eyes. But the Point Pleasant, Virginia Mothman statue looks like a literal moth. The former design cut quite the interesting silhouette and matched the feather coat, but the more mothy design looked more unique to me. So I went with actual moth wings, some neck fluff, antennae, and furry skin. The moth she's based off of is the speckled emperor moth because I liked those striking eye spots. Here's Ruby's final design. I could have maybe given her more value contrast, but done is better than perfect. I like her anyway. We're gonna do a really quick one for Sibella. As previously mentioned, she is Ghoul School College's dean. She took over from Miss Grimwood a couple decades ago and is living her best life. Sibella is from the original Ghoul School movie, I just aged her up here. I adore all the girls from the Ghoul School movie. Any of them could have been featured here. Tanis, Elsa Frankenteen, Winnie, Fanty, and Sibella all had fun designs and cute personalities. Maybe Fanty is a professor here and Winnie's the gym coach. Sibella just seems like the leader type, so that's why she's the dean. Sibella Dracula can usually be seen with the dragon Matches on her shoulder. Matches belongs to the school, but he likes Sibella. He looks and acts scary, but really he's just protective of the students. For her design, I gave her a purple blazer with bell sleeves, a long flowy skirt, and some batwing motifs on the cuffs, lapels, and hems. She's also got buttons in the shape of open eyes, and, of course, her iconic floor-length purple hair. And here's all the ghouls, Shaggy and Scooby included. As you can tell, this was kinda just an excuse to put my own OCs into the Scoobyverse. I had a ton of fun with this project. If you want more Scoobyverse stuff, stay tuned for another installment in the fall. It'll probably come out on Scooby-Doo Day again. In the meantime, check out my other videos or my new Comic Academy course. Bye!